All right, in this explainer, we are diving deep into one of the most transformative, brutal, and frankly, world-changing events in all of medieval history, the First Crusade.
Just imagine that for a second. This wasn't a description of a battlefield. Nope. This was the scene in Jerusalem in 1099 during the victory celebration after Christian knights captured the Holy City.
And that's really the question at the heart of this entire story, isn't it? To find the answer, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning, to a world of emperors, popes, and empires that were on an unavoidable collision course.
Okay, let's set the stage. Our story really kicks off in the late 11th century. Europe is, kind of stabilizing, but the Byzantine Empire, over in the east, is in some serious, serious trouble.
So you've got these two major players on the board, and each one has a completely different agenda. Over in the east, you have the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I, and he is desperate. His empire is just reeling from a devastating defeat by the Seljuk Turks, a seriously powerful nomadic dynasty that had conquered most of Anatolia, which was the heartland of his empire. All he wants is some elite mercenaries to help him fight back. But back in the west, Pope Urban II, he sees a much bigger opportunity. See, Europe's warrior class, the knights, were causing total chaos, just constantly fighting each other. The Pope saw a chance to unite them all under his authority, maybe heal the big split with the Eastern Church, and point all that violent energy towards a single holy goal.
So, in 1095, at the Council of Clermont in France, Pope Urban gets up and delivers the speech of a lifetime. He calls on all the knights of Christendom to march east and liberate Jerusalem. And then he makes them an offer they just can't refuse. You fight for God, and all your sins will be forgiven.
And the response? It was explosive. The cry, Deus Vult, God wills it, just catches fire. It sweeps across Europe like a wildfire, igniting this incredible religious passion that's going to mobilize tens of thousands of people.
But here's where things get interesting. Before the main armies of knights and nobles could even get their act together, a totally different kind of crusade took off, and it really leads to a tale of two very different movements.
First up, you have the People's Crusade. This thing was led by these charismatic preachers like Peter the Hermit, and it was basically an undisciplined, chaotic wave of peasants and common folk. Tragically, on their way through the Rhineland, they unleashed these horrific massacres on Jewish communities. And when this ill-equipped force finally made it to Anatolia, well, they were swiftly and utterly crushed by the Seljuks. Just like that.
Now, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have the Prince's Crusade. This was the main event. We're talking about a professional army led by some of the most powerful and experienced military commanders in all of Europe, guys like Godfrey of Bouillon and Bohemond of Taranto. Unlike the People's Crusade, this was a disciplined, heavily armed force, not a disorganized mob.
So, how did this professional army actually fare? Well, their journey was no walk in the park. It was a brutal, grueling trek across thousands of miles of hostile territory, and it was filled with starvation, disease, and constant battle.
Their campaign really started with a series of hard-won victories that proved their military skill. First, they managed to besiege and take the Seljuk capital of Nicaea in 1097, a huge strategic win. Not long after that, they survived a devastating ambush and pulled off a crucial victory at the Battle of Dorylaeum, which really showed off the raw power of their heavy cavalry. But, every victory just pushed them deeper into enemy territory, leading them to their greatest test yet, the massive, fortified city of Antioch.
8 months. Just let that sink in for a second. That's how long the Crusaders were stuck outside the walls of Antioch. For 8 long months, they endured starvation and disease. The entire army was on the absolute brink of collapse.
And this is where the story takes an incredible turn. After finally getting inside the city through treachery, the Crusaders find themselves trapped. A massive Muslim relief army shows up and besieges them. Morale hits rock bottom. And then, a priest claims to have found the Holy Lance, the actual spear that pierced Christ on the cross. Now, whether it was real or not didn't even matter. The discovery just electrified the army. Filled with this renewed, unshakable faith, they charged out of the city and completely smashed the force that was besieging them.
With Antioch finally secured, the path was clear. After years of struggle and just horrific losses, the remaining Crusaders, now just a fraction of the original force, arrived at the walls of their ultimate prize, Jerusalem.
The siege was incredibly difficult. The Crusaders were suffering from a severe lack of water, but after building these massive siege towers, they launched their final, desperate assault.
On July 15, 1099, they broke through the defenses and just poured into the city, overwhelming its defenders from the Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt, who, ironically, had only recently captured the city themselves.
And this brings us right back to where we started. The moment of triumph was also a moment of just unspeakable horror. The Crusaders, fueled by years of religious zeal and the brutalizing experience of their long campaign, slaughtered the city's inhabitants, Muslim and Jew alike, in a bloody massacre that absolutely shocked the world.
But capturing Jerusalem wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. In many ways, it was the beginning of a new, incredibly complex chapter in the relationship between the East and the West.
See, this is so important to understand. The Crusaders didn't just pack up their bags and go home. They stayed. They carved out 4 new Christian states right in the heart of the Levant: the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Tripoli. These became Western European outposts that would actually last for nearly 200 years.
So when you look back, the legacy of the First Crusade is just deeply complicated. On the one hand, it hugely increased the power and the authority of the papacy across all of Europe. It also opened up major new trade routes, bringing Eastern goods like spices and silk back to the West, which really stimulated their economies. But on the other hand, it created this profound and lasting rift between Christianity and Islam. It set a terrible precedent for religious violence that would echo for centuries, inspiring waves of future crusades and, in response, jihads.
So in the end, the First Crusade was, believe it or not, the most successful of them all. It was the only one to actually achieve its main goal. But it forces us to ask a really difficult question that historians still debate today. A holy war was won, but at what cost to humanity itself?